Hey Spider Nation, welcome back to another episode of Spider-Man's Tangled WebShow. I'm your host, Jonathan, webmaster of SpiderManFanRave.com, SpiderManFanRave.com. Pretty basic URL, go on over there. We got some cool Spider-Man news, articles, editorials, reviews, anything you want, we got over there. Tonight I'm being joined by James. What's going on, James?
Not much. I kind of don't really feel that good today. But besides that, everything's pretty good. I had a good week last week. I hanged out with my buddy who was in the Air Force. He came back for a month, and this was his last week, so we did a lot of cool things. We went to Lake Geneva, had a good bite to eat. We watched the movies. We just hanged out with our friend, and miss you, man, and good luck, to you and everybody else in the Air Force. So that's pretty much all.
All right. Tonight I'm also being joined by Jan. What's going on, Jan?
Not much. I really had a great week, actually. It was my birthday week, and my birthday was yesterday. I turned 17. And
Happy birthday, Jan.
Happy birthday, Jan. Let's all sing the birthday song. Well, no, let's not do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah, because that's all we need is for we get a YouTube copyright violation from the people who own Happy Birthday to You.
Yep.
Do.
So I spent it with my friends, kind of like James. I actually had probably kind of a similar day yesterday. My friends came over Friday night, and they spent the night, and we stayed up till like 3:15 in the morning just hanging out. And for my birthday present, we watched Spider-Man 1, and then my other friend was also turning 17, so we watched Star Wars 1, Episode 1, not the first Star Wars, but Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And
God, your guys' birthday sucked. No, just joking.
Yeah, we actually had a lot of fun watching it because it's a really bad movie, but it's kind of fun to watch with your friends and make fun of, and there's enough good stuff to be watchable. But at the end of the day, I thought this was a far better movie. And
romance.
Yeah, and
Hey.
we also.
Hey, we went to go. At least it could be worse. We went with our friend, and we're like, "Hey, let's go see a movie at the movie theater." And the only movie that was showing in the time that we were all hanging out, pretty much it started around that time, was either Fantastic Four or Ant-Man, and we all already saw Ant-Man, and we didn't want to go see Fantastic Four also, so we went in to go see a second showing of Ant-Man. For me and my friend Trevor, because our other friend was obviously not there when we saw it, but our other friend was like, "Yeah, I want to go see a movie," and then we looked it up, and it's like Fantastic Four and Ant-Man, and we're like, oh, I already saw Ant-Man, fuck, but I don't want to see Fantastic Four again either. Damn it. We're going to Ant-Man again, screw it.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. We all were watching the movie, and there was like 8 of us, and we were all in my basement watching it, so we were like ordering subs from Jimmy John's, so we were all like passing the computer, my laptop around to order, and yeah, it was a really fun night. So it was like 24 hours of hanging out with friends. And then I got some really cool birthday presents. I got a Superman, some Batman trade, and I got a lot of Iron Man. I got the first 2 Matt Fraction Iron Man omnibuses, which I'm really excited to read, and James told me that they're great. So.
Yeah, I told him that that's a good run. He's going to enjoy that.
Yep. So my week was pretty great.
Holy shit, James doesn't have a hat on. He didn't have a hat on for that one moment. It's so weird.
Itch on my head. God damn it.
It's so weird seeing James without a hat. It's just like, it's not a sight I will ever get used to. What have I been up to this week? I've been up to pretty much nothing this week. I've been up to going to college, hanging out with family. Pretty much the same stuff I always do.
John, you reminded me. Tuesday I start school again. No, I'm just joking about that. I'm actually kind of excited. I actually am going to school for something I want to go to school for.
Dude, isn't it nice to actually like go to school and care about what you're learning?
Is that something you actually give a shit about, not like high school?
I mean, it feels so good. Honestly, it does. I'm actually in classes where I actually want to be there.
I used to be one of those guys in high school, middle school, and I'll tell you, and it wasn't even like a bully thing, like, oh my god, I didn't want to go to school because I was bullied or anything. I wasn't really bullied at all because I hanged out with my clique of friends and that was it. But it was more of an, oh my god, you're gonna drag me to that class. No, like I didn't want to go to school at all. And now it's like I can't wait for school to start Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling when you actually realize that this schooling thing that we're actually going to do is something we're actually going to care about again. I probably shouldn't say that like on the air because I'm studying to be a teacher, so I probably shouldn't bash the educational system. But I'm gonna do it.
You say that now, but wait till exam weeks, John. Wait till exam weeks when you're gonna be like, "Fuck my life."
Yeah, I know. I know exactly when that's gonna happen. All right, as I stretch on camera because I'm so
my exam weeks suck too, even though they're different than your guys's. But like, I have all honors classes, so my exams are like really.
Cry me a river.
Leave me alone. A birthday.
Jan, for all my exams, especially for culinary, and especially when it comes to sanitation and hygiene with culinary, which I took last year, but still I'm going to count that in too because I'm just going to explain to it. You got to get like an A. Getting anything below an A, you may
You
not
fail.
have failed, but you basically failed, and they won't trust you because there's a little thing of we don't want you to kill us all with food poisoning.
Yeah, there's a little thing called the health code.
I don't necessarily fail, but my parents would not be happy with me if I got below an A. But.
Oh, crime me a river.
It's to the point that for a joke one day, me and my friends decided on one of those free dating sites, just for a joke, we decided to take the personality test just to see if we'll get replies back. We deleted it right away. I'm not kidding you. We deleted the profile right away. But we did it, and it was hilarious. Because we just did it for like a week just to see if we'll get replies back, and we just laughed if we did. But we took the personality test, and like the last few questions, like, if something falls on the floor, will you eat it? And like explain why you. And I said no. And for all my explanations is, I'm a chef. I don't want somebody to go back and see this.
My explanation would be I don't trust people or any floor.
Oh, it could be worse. My one friend, he completely ripped it a new asshole. Like he deliberately made his person sound like the worst human being. Like he should be in jail.
Oh man, I love taking personality tests online.
About women, and one of the choices literally was are you an abusive man? And he said, oh yeah, but not with a punch. He went on his examination, I won't punch. Like he did that just for a joke though, just because how stupid those compatibility tests are on them.
Well, it's kind of like completely unrelated, but I was one of my friends. He likes rap music. But he doesn't actually like rap music because he likes it. He likes it because he thinks like the lyrics are really funny. And he was playing me a song called "Choices," and if you look it up, it's like probably one of the funniest. I've been singing it.
We do not mean to offend anyone who actually is abused, but
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying though, like if it was a question like that, he deliberately did that for a joke. I'm not saying I'll do that for a joke. I'm saying he deliberately did that for a joke.
We apologize for any disrespect or anything offensive we may or may not have said, but
yeah, John just made me realize I pulled the Thomas, and I apologize for that right now.
Yeah, we do apologize for that. But let's get on topic here. What are we going to talk about tonight in terms of Spider-Man? We don't really have any news this week.
Andrew Garfield apparently hates the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and that's it.
Okay, let me just address that right now. Andrew Garfield has always been his own worst critic. If you read the quote, he was talking about how he hates himself because he couldn't live up to his own expectations. Done. Conversation over. The only news topic that's worth anything this week is actually that apparently some woman came out and said she would hang herself if she saw another Spider-Man reboot.
Oh, that was an actress. She was joking. She just said that she thinks there's too many superhero movies now. And she said that she's like, they're all great, but enough is enough or something. It was like a British actress, Emma Thompson, I think was her name.
All I could think to myself was, wow, overreacting much? It's like, I mean, I knew she was joking because obviously people say that all the time. Oh, if this happens, I'm going to hang myself, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's like, okay, people, please don't use that phrase because there are actually people out there who do that,
No, the worst part, though, is the one person, I think it was from CNN, who had an article about how much they hated Peter Parker and the fact that they're rebooting Peter Parker again. And they go, God, if you're going to reboot, then just do the race car with Miles Morales, at least. And it's like all this stuff. And I'm thinking, the Batman Superman trailer came out, and I don't see anybody bitching about them redoing the origin for that. Really? Nobody's going to bitch about Bruce Wayne, but you're going to bitch about if they redo the origin for Peter Parker, who only had it done 20 times on the big screen compared to Batman a dozen?
And they're not even doing the origin. They said, the writer said that there would be two things that would not be in the movie. They said that there would be no Spider-Man dancing like Spider-Man 3, and that there would be no origin.
I demand a dance scene.
Well, here's the point, though. When he says that, the origin, I think, is still going to be in there because it is movie one. But I think you're going to get away with it, like kind of like either A, Hulk, how it was in the credits, snippets of, oh, he gets bit by the spider, oh, his Uncle Ben gets killed, okay, power and responsibility, okay, that stuff. And then that, or it's going to be a flashback where he's going to like see somebody and it's going to trigger memories of his uncle being killed or something like that.
I think they should do it like Daredevil, like the Daredevil Netflix show where they do the origin, like they start with him already. Like the first scene should be Spider-Man, and then maybe throw in some quick scenes of the origin in there.
Well, no, Daredevil began with the origin because it begins with the dad walking down the street and seeing his son with the.
I mean, like
my eyes.
the full origin. Like, they cut to Daredevil pretty quickly in that show. Like, he
All
was
right.
already by the time it started.
All right, but as we move on to our main topic of the evening, we actually are going to review a story arc in Amazing Spider-Man that was requested by Jan this week because it's Jan's turn to pick the issues that we're reviewing. So tonight we're going to take a look at Amazing Spider-Man number 198, 199, and number 200. We're going to take a look at a Centennial issue on this show. We haven't done too many Centennial issues throughout our. Let's see, this is episode number 64. So we haven't actually done too many of these special issue reviews. To give
You guys only did one, didn't you? You guys only did 300, and that's about it.
Yeah, we did 300. Did we do another one? I'm sure we did another one.
Because this podcast is pre 700, isn't it? I mean, post 700, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you reviewed 700. So no.
You guys did review 700.
I don't know. I don't remember what we reviewed last week. But basically, to give a little bit of history and context to set this arc up, at this point, this is Marv Wolfman's run on Amazing Spider-Man.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard some pretty mixed reviews on him. Some people like him, some people don't. Some pretty notable things from Marv Wolfman's run. The first proposal of Peter Parker to Mary Jane Watson, where she basically just turns him down, and their relationship kind of starts to tumble a little bit, and she ends up basically going to Florida and saying, forget my number. That happens. The biggest thing that happens is the introduction of the Black Cat. Her character makes her debut in Amazing Spider-Man number 194, only to supposedly die in the next issue afterwards. Of course, she isn't, as we learn.
Wow. Well, having Mary Jane leave the book to some place, weirdly, after being in a relationship with Peter Parker and then introduce a new love interest. Why does that sound so familiar?
Gosh, I was hoping we were going to get through one episode without mentioning something like that. What else was I even talking about? Oh yeah, at this point, Aunt May has also moved into a nursing home after however many thousand heart attacks she's had throughout the several issues of the book at this point.
I got the count. In 200 issues, she had a heart attack exactly 200 times because it seems like it's every issue.
Really, I thought it was more than once every issue, but. So Aunt May has moved into Restwell Nursing Home, and she seems to be recovering there. She seems to be recuperating. But then all of a sudden, at the end of issue 195, Peter Parker gets a note that his Aunt May has passed away, and so he obviously rushes in the next issue to find out what happened, and he runs into Ludwig Reinhardt, who's the head of the nursing home, and he says, "Yeah, it just happened." And so Peter's grief-stricken, all of this, but he starts to think, man, something's not right about this. Something does not feel right here.
Wow. A doctor who has the same name as the fake Doctor Mysterio claimed to be a few years ago told me my aunt's dead. Man, there's something wrong with that, but I just can't put my finger on the fact that this doctor has the same name of the fake doctor that Mysterio said he was once.
Thank you, James, for spoiling my setup. And so basically he figures out, hey, Ludwig Reinhardt, I know him from somewhere. He swings off to go confront him, but he's ultimately intercepted by the Kingpin's men, and he has to fight the Kingpin in issue 197, all that stuff, and that leads us into where we are with issue 198. But also, a subplot that's going on in the background is that the original burglar from Amazing Fantasy number 15, is kind of manipulating and blackmailing Reinhardt at the Restwell nursing home in order to kind of further his own goals, which we'll learn about here as we go through these issues. And so all of that's going on, and this to give context as to when these issues came out. These issues came out in 1979-ish. Wolfman began his run somewhere in 78, and then these issues came out probably somewhere in 1979. 200 is its original publication date is January 1980. It probably came out a few months before that, if I've got the correlation right between publication dates and actual release dates. But basically, that's where we are in terms of where the story is for these issues of Amazing Spider-Man. So as we take a look at Amazing Spider-Man number 198, I am going to hand it over to Jan because he's basically going to be doing the recap for this issue, and he's also going to be the one giving his thoughts as we go first here. So Jan, why don't you give us the creative team and give us the summary of what happened in Amazing Spider-Man number 198?
So the creative team. This is written by Marv Wolfman, who was also the editor. Sal Buscema and Jim Mooney both did the finishes, and I'm assuming
Hey.
that Buscema drew it, and then Mooney.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
I'm assuming that Sal
I don't think
Buscema, because back then they never specified who was the actual like artist and who was the inker. So I assume when they just throw them together like that, to mean that one of them was the inker. So I'm guessing since Sal came first, that Jim probably inked it, but that could be wrong. I don't know. But this kind of does remind me a little bit of Buscema, so that's my guess. But
Is it Ramita?
what?
Who's the other guy? Is it Ramita?
Jim Mooney.
Oh.
He was the inker, and then he drew a lot of spectacular. Anyway, Irv Watanabe was the letterer. Um, Glynis Ween, I don't know if that person's related to Lean Ween, but Glynis Ween was the colorist, and Jim Shooter was the consulting editor, and he was obviously, this is when he was the main editor at Marvel, and he had a pretty long tenure. Um, okay, so really quick question. This starts with Peter kind of like recovering from his knockout, drag out fight with Kingpin last issue, and was that the last like major appearance of Wilson Fisk and Spider-Man for a while? Because wasn't this around the time when he kind of moved over to Daredevil?
He, I don't know for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, because I know this because 79 and 78, 79 and 80, this is when the issue came out, right?
Yeah, around then.
Yeah, 79 and 80 is also when Frank Miller's run started on Daredevil, so yeah.
Because Kingpin doesn't really show up much. I mean, I think he might show up in an issue. There's like an issue of Spectacular that happens in the third Essential. Because I go by, when I'm trying to remember when issues happened, I usually go by Essentials just because I read them. But
Yeah, I want to say it was because this is around Frank Miller's run started, but
yeah,
don't quote me because we don't know when Frank Miller started using Kingpin. Just because a run started doesn't mean he started using the character, so don't
It's
quote me, but I guess that it would be.
it's probably Fisk's last major appearance before that big Owl Octopus gang war story in Spectacular Spider-Man that was written by Bill Mantlo.
I know he shows up like he hires Boomerang to kill Spider-Man or something like that, and I think it's Roger Stern's, like near the end of Roger Stern's run on Spectacular. But anyway, so just kind of clarifying some questions I had about continuity. But this is pretty much the last major appearance of Kingpin as like a big bad, in Spider-Man's universe.
I would say that. Yeah, I would say that was his swan song, and now he's either depending on what point of view you have, he's either split between Spidey and Daredevil, or now a Daredevil villain who occasionally will mess with Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so basically, Peter's kind of he's like out of it, and he's kind of hallucinating about Aunt May and kind of imagining all these people who've had important roles in his life, and he eventually, well, he doesn't do that yet. Okay, so we see that Mysterio has kind of been, or Quentin Beck, I should say, and they don't ever refer to him as Quentin Beck in these issues. So I think that Lane Wine, or no, not Lane Wine, Marv Wolfman might have forgotten what Mysterio's real name was and just used Ludwig Reinhardt instead, because I don't think they ever call him.
That's
Quentin.
a fake name he always gave Mysterio.
What?
He used that a few times.
Well, yeah, he used that before, but like they never use his real name in this issue. I don't think. So
I don't think they ever named him his real name until like I want to say it's the 90s he gets the real name.
don't they call him Quentin Beck in his first appearance?
No.
I don't care. Just go on.
No, because can I explain this? Because the first time he's Reinhardt, Peter takes off the makeup and he goes, Mysterio, I knew it was you, Mysterio, and he's not dressed up like Mysterio. He's dressed up in normal street clothes, but he doesn't even call him Quentin Beck. He just calls him Mysterio. So I want to say it's the 90s he gets the name Quentin Beck.
Okay.
But don't quote me on it. Maybe it's the Spectacular issue coming up where it's Spectacular 50, but.
Oh yeah, that's probably where it is actually. Anyway, okay, moving on. So Quentin Beck is kind of being controlled by the burglar who killed Uncle Ben, and I'm going to call him Dennis Carradine. I'm just going to call him Carradine because that's like what he's usually named in other stuff.
That's what I just call him.
Yeah, I call him Carradine.
Even in ASM, he never gets a name. In the extra comics, he doesn't get a name, but yeah, I'll just call him Carradine too.
So and it's interesting. Carradine is kind of like the main villain of Wolfman's run. Like I'd say from the mid. Like right after, I'd say pretty much from the time the Jackal was defeated up to from the Jackal's defeat to this issue, Carradine was kind of the big bad in the Spider-Man, to use the TV term, at least in Amazing, as far as Amazing goes. He was kind of the big bad, and he's kind of forcing Quentin Beck to work for him because he's figured out Quentin Beck is retired from supervillainy because he's tired of getting beaten up by Spider-Man, so he has just set himself up as like the what do you call it? Anyway, so basically he uses hallucinations to like mess with Carradine and kind of like takes over. Like he was kind of being forced to work with Carradine, and he kind of like becomes like the dominant one in the in like the team up, I guess. And you kind of see some backstory because there was another Mysterio who showed up in Amazing named Daniel Beckhart, who he was like the replacement. I thought it was a stupid story, but you kind of see like the little bit of like an untold tale, so to speak, behind those two meeting and everything. And essentially, Mysterio knocks the burglar out and puts him in a basement. I don't think you see that in this issue. Spider-Man has figured out who he thinks Ludwig Reinhardt is, and he kind of goes to the nursing home to try to hunt him down. And basically, this is my favorite part of the whole issue. And this is like the first, one of the reasons Mysterio is one of my favorite Spider-Man characters is that I love like the mind trickery and the illusion, and he kind of like uses all these crazy illusions to mess with Spider-Man's head, and it's a really inventive sequence. And you see Jonah have a heart attack, and so Jonah's kind of out of commission for the time being, and I don't think they were married yet, but it was his girlfriend, whose name I cannot remember. What's her name?
Madison?
Yeah, that one. She's like, oh my God, Jonah.
He's like, oh my God, no! Did you know I invented Spider Slayers? Oh wait, Dan Slott didn't write the book yet.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
And so Spider-Man, he's freaked out by all the illusions that he's fighting, so he covers his eyes with webs to like so his spider sense can tell him what's real and what's not. And he has a really cool fight with Mysterio, and he gets surrounded by a ton of Mysterio illusions, and ends up kind of like being defeated and wakes up tied to the bottom of the bathtub as it's being slowly filled up. And Mysterio's going to try to drown Spider-Man alive. So that's this issue. I'm sorry, John, that it took so long. I was kind of getting sidetracked. But this is a really good issue. I think this arc is probably my second favorite Mysterio story. Mysterio's Spider-Man. He's outside of Norman Osborn and Otto Octavius. Mysterio is my favorite Spider-Man villain. So as a Mysterio fan, I really enjoyed this story, and I think the only one that I like more than it as far as Mysterio goes is the one that Dan Slott did when he was on the Spider-Man Brain Trust as part of the Gauntlet, the Mysterioso or something, I think it was called. But it's a great Mysterio story. I think he's used pretty much to perfection, like all his crazy illusions and over-the-top gloating and everything is perfect. I think making the burglar a major villain is a brilliant idea because he was kind of Spider-Man's first nemesis and arguably had the biggest impact on his life, even a little bit more than Norman Osborn. Even though Norman Osborn has been the biggest impact on his life post-Spider-Man, I think of his life overall, I'd say probably the burglar is up there too, just because he's kind of the reason Spider-Man came to be, as much as Uncle Ben almost. So I just think this is a great issue, and the Jonah stuff is, it's okay. I think, Marv Wolfman did a really great job kind of fleshing Jonah out and exploring his crazy paranoia. So overall, I give this one a solid thumbs up.
All right, James, let's go ahead with your thoughts. What are you thinking of Amazing 198 here?
Oh, sorry, I was looking at myself in a selfie because I got the fan blowing, and I feel a little bit of short little breeze. You guys won't get that reference; it's a wrestling reference. But anyways, Tyler Breeze is a wrestler. He goes like this with a selfie, like it's a mirror, and he looks at himself. So I was doing it as a joke while I was waiting for my turn.
First, let me take a selfie. All right, James, don't actually take a selfie, please.
No, please. Let's take a selfie together. Let me get set. Oh, I don't even got it set up. I got a text messages. So I'm faking it. I don't even got the phone on for selfies.
Oh, and just to clarify this, I do not have demonic symbols on my phone. It's supernatural, not demonic symbols.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm setting it up. Let me make sure I don't unplug the computer. But podcast. Okay, there. Anyways, my review now. This is a good issue. It's really well done. It continues the plot people thinking Peter going insane, I think is actually a pretty cool touch. Like, I like that when you have these kind of moments with superheroes where they get hallucinations because of holograms or, in Spider-Man's case, Mysterio, and the rest of the world sees it as just he's finally losing it. It was bound to happen, and it finally happened. He cracked. Where we know, oh no, it's not. It's Mysterio. No, and I love that. And it ties into, Mysterio's last time he did this whole doctor scheme, where he was a psychologist saying, Peter, you're going insane with all these hallucinations, and it was a Mysterio plot, and what do you know? Same thing happening here, and it's a Mysterio plot. So I like that kind of stuff. The Jonah moment with the heart attack, it's getting up there with Aunt May, how many times Jonah has a heart attack and loses the bugle. Like, this is the beginning of, first of, 3 or 4 times he has a heart attack and loses the bugle because of it?
No, he had a heart attack once at the end of Amazing Spider-Man number 70, where they were trying to get that clay tablet that ended up being the tablet of time. Oh, sorry, wrong continuity, but it was actually a clay tablet. He had a heart attack at the end of it because Spider-Man basically lost it, and he was like, Jonah, I'm sick of your bullshit. So he kind of tried to threaten him, and he had a heart attack there. That's the only heart attack that I can remember prior to this issue, though.
And then after that, it happened a few more times. Because I want to say it happened one more time in the 80s, or 2 more times in the 80s, and then it happened again 2 more times during the Brand New Day era. That's the first arc and the second arc he has it. No, the third arc has it because the second time he has it, he goes to visit him in the hospital. Peter, Spider-Man, goes to finish Jonah, and he goes, hey, I know we have bad blood, but you had a really bad heart attack, bro. I just want to make sure you're okay. I know we don't get along, but still, you're a nice guy. I want to make sure that you're okay, Jonah. Here's the cigar. And here's the issue of the Daily Bugle. Did you know that your wife stabbed you in the back and sold it to another guy? She what? Oh God, I shouldn't have said that, should I? Like, literally, he has a
bad blood.
Yeah. Yeah, this sets up Jonah, just like the other times he lost a heart attack. Yeah. Jonah has a heart attack, and what this does is sets up the few times, he loses the Bugle. But it doesn't really matter, because who cares who's the boss of the Bugle is going to be? Because like I said, I'm a wrestling fan. And as all wrestling fans know, there is only one boss.
No.
Sorry, I love Sasha. Every NXT fan loves Sasha.
We're going to get copyright infringement charges now.
It's okay because it's Sasha Banks. It's awesome. She's awesome. Anyways, I like the Jonah part because but it's kind of gets bad because this is the beginning of it. But he's gonna start to become the male equivalent of Aunt May when it comes to heart attacks, and so you got that stuff. And there's not much to say about this issue because it's part 1 of a 3-part story, and so I pretty much touched it, except that it's classic Wolfman. So check it out.
All right. I'm assuming James is gonna give it a thumbs up, correct? All right, that's good. My thoughts on the issue. It's not really a very deep issue. It's kind of basic almost. There's not really a whole lot that happens because of the fact that it is such a big action sequence. There is plot development within the story, but the action does take kind of a dominance, I feel. I do like the opening scene with Spider-Man's sort of nightmare and how he's in the hospital because the police find him after his battle with the Kingpin. He's in the hospital. He's having a nightmare, and the doctor says, "Do you know how many times that guy has stared death in the face? Just imagine the things he's dreaming about right now." I did like that moment. I felt it was appropriate given everything we've seen Spider-Man go through throughout the past 197 issues plus. At this point with all the other titles and stuff like that. So I did like that moment, and plus, it's just the classic Peter Parker trope, him imagining people that he's let down, people that he feels guilty about, all that stuff. I did like that moment quite a bit. Something else I liked, I do like Mysterio being the head of the nursing home. I do think that is a good twist. I think that if you were a reader at that point, you probably didn't see that coming because it was... Ludwig Reinhardt is a story and an alias that was used so long ago at that point. It was used so long ago at that point that I can see it being a shock to other readers who may have come on just within those past few years. So I think that was a well done setup. And plus, I agree with everyone here. I do like Mysterio. I like the battle between him and Spider-Man. I particularly like Spider-Man webbing his eyes shut and basically just saying, okay, I need to rely on my spider sense here because I can't trust my own vision. I like that quite a bit. I thought that was a pretty solid use of that idea. I think Mysterio is just a solid villain overall. I don't really have many complaints with the issue because a lot of it is just a massive fight scene. So overall, I do give the issue a thumbs up. I think it's a solid. I hesitate to call it a part one because it's a continuation of a serial story. It's a part one as in terms of what we're reviewing tonight, but overall, I think it's a solid enough issue. But as we move along here, we are going.
It's kind of like when we reviewed the Clone Saga, the 70s Clone Saga a few weeks ago. We started at, what, 149, but technically the Clone Saga began a few issues before that when the Gwen clone showed up, so yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, but as we move along here to Amazing Spider-Man number 199, I'm going to handle the recap and stuff for this issue. We got Marv Wolfman as the scripter and the editor, Sabi Sima as the guest artist, Jim Mooney as the finisher, Joe Rosen as the letterer, G. Russos on colors, and Jim Shooter as the editor-in-chief. He's credited as the consulting editor in there, but that was his title during the time. Basically, Spider-Man, this issue picks up where the last issue left off. Spider-Man's chained to the bottom of a swimming pool, or what he thinks is a swimming pool, and he's desperately trying to get out before he ends up drowning. And in order to break away, he's thinking about giving up the fight, but ultimately he thinks of Aunt May. He thinks of, okay, I need to get out of this because I need to find out what happened to Aunt May. I can't fail now. I need to keep going. It's kind of reminiscent of the kind of in the same spirit as Amazing Spider-Man number 33, where he's lifting the heavy machinery off of him. So he manages to break free, but ultimately he finds that it was all an illusion. He was never in danger at all. And he just thinks to himself, wow, Mysterio, you really outdid yourself this time. So he swings back home because he decides, okay, I need to get some sleep. I'm no good to anyone in my exhausted state. So he ends up sleeping for 24 hours, and when he wakes up, a bunch of his friends come over, including Harry, Liz, Flash, all of them. They come over and they try to make amends with Peter because a few issues prior he had a little bit of a falling out with them just because of everything that he's been going through, and he ended up kind of sniping at them, trying to kind of biting at them a bit, overreacting to things. So they come over, they make amends, all that. While throughout this entire time, Peter is trying to hide the fact that he's still wearing his Spider-Man costume, so he's wearing his robe and everything, and he's trying to hide everything. So all those typical Peter Parker antics. And so Spider-Man swings over to Aunt May's old house in Forest Hills to try to get some answers, and there he finds Mysterio, and they have another bit of a battle. There's a cool moment where Spider-Man is actually led to believe that he's been erased from existence, and the whole panel shows him being dark and surrounded by basically nothing, but he manages to remind himself, okay, this is all an illusion. So they do battle there. He chases Mysterio across the city, and ultimately they end up in the Restwell nursing home again, where Mysterio shoots him with kind of a tranquilizer dart but not really a tranquilizer dart. It kind of knocks him out, makes him a bit delirious, a little bit shaky, and he ends up falling to the floor. And Mysterio basically ends the issue by claiming that he's won and that Spider-Man's finished. And that's the cliffhanger that's going to lead us into issue number 200. Now, I'm going to give my basic thoughts on this issue. I kind of thought this was a bit more of a mediocre issue. I didn't think it was necessarily bad, but a lot of it, like the previous issue, a lot of it was taken up by action sequences and fight scenes that I really didn't feel were worthy of as much time as they got. I did like the opening scene of Spider-Man breaking free of the drowning illusion. I thought that was not only was it a nice, maybe it was an homage, maybe it wasn't, but it was a nice spiritual homage to Amazing Spider-Man number 33, where he lifts all the heavy machinery up. It's usually a common saying for me that Spider-Man needs to stop lifting shit because it's so overdone and beaten to death by this point in Spider-Man history with everything that's come out from 1962 to now, that it just needs to stop. It needs to.
Well, 65 more likely, wasn't it? Because that's when he went to college in the comics, 65, 64.
Yeah, it was like 1966 when he started lifting shit. But I commonly say that stuff like that needs to stop because it's just so overdone. I thought it was done well here, so it didn't. And really, he didn't lift anything here, but the spirit of it here. But I thought it was well done here, so I didn't mind it here. I didn't, and I didn't mind the whole effect of Spider-Man going dark during the battle with Mysterio. I thought that was cool. But really, that whole fight to me was just mediocre. There was really nothing special about it. Okay, they chased each other across the city. Threw some more illusions at him. Kind of, I've seen this before. I saw this in the previous issue. There's really nothing new here to really distinguish it from the last time. So I thought that was a bit mediocre. And really, the civilian Peter Parker scene with Betty Brant, or like with Flash, Liz, and Harry and all his friends, not really much interesting stuff happened there. So really, apart from the opening scene, I didn't think that this was a really spectacular issue. I'd probably give it a thumb sideways. It's more neutral for me. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's just there, if you ask me. It's kind of the part 2 that sets up that, pushes things ahead. Not really much happens in the way of speciality, but it's nothing too bad that it ultimately destroys the story. I give it a thumb sideways, neutral, and so we're going to go to James. What are you thinking of Amazing Spider-Man number 199?
I'm thinking that this is another great episode. Issue, I mean, damn it. Yeah, this is a great issue. Again, the art's pretty well done. They bring up a point with John. Yes, I agree. Peter needs to stop lifting shit. Because I remember back during Brand New Day, when they had this manifesto at the end, Swing Surf story, and in it they pretty much outright said, we're no longer going to have Peter lift shit, and we're no longer going to have him visit that damn bridge. And sure enough, I think it was less than a year later, he's lifting up some big shit.
Yep, unscheduled stop, written by Mark Waid. He's lifting shit again.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's actually a pretty good story, in my opinion.
It's good, but it's just funny because they said one thing that's in the Brand New Day era that you won't see. He won't no longer visit the bridge, and he won't no longer be lifting shit. And then sure enough, less than a year later, he's back lifting shit.
That's the nature of the industry. But, yeah, I agree with you, guys. So there was the big moment in...
Let James finish.
Yeah, I agree with John. That part needs to be shit. Another part I think that actually is kind of shit here. Well, I agree with John that, or was it Jan who said this point with the issue before and this issue, where the Reinhardt reveal, Peter should have known. And because it's one of those things where, granted, yes, probably a lot of the readers, because they were still kids a lot of the readers at the time were still children and kids, they wouldn't obviously catch on to stuff that happened 20 years before. But my point of, in it as a story, Peter should remember, because it wasn't that long ago. He should have remembered the name. Oh, I'm Reinhardt. Dude, you're Mysterio. Everybody should have called it out. Mysterio, it's in the papers. Mysterio. But nobody caught on to it until he reveals it's Mysterio. Yeah, granted, it's a kid thing, so kids won't catch on. But at the same time, story-wise, it made everybody look dumb. So I don't agree with that. But the Peter, Liz, and Harry parts, with Peter having to wear the robe, it's hijinks, it's hilarious. It's classic Peter Parker. This is what you expect to see in these old issues. Oh, I got to put on a robe because Aunt May might see me with my costume on, or my roommate, or whoever it is. That's something that happened a lot, similar like the lifting the big shit. That's something else that happened a lot with Peter needing to go grab a robe or a blanket or whatever to cover up the fact that he's wearing the costume. So yeah, thumbs up, great issue. Let's see what happens in the big 200.
Let's see what happens with Jan's thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man number 199.
Okay, I enjoyed it. It's like very much like a middle chapter. Like it's just kind of I can't know how, but like sort of resolve some stuff, but also kind of sets up the big finale a little bit. The fight with Mysterio was fun as always. There's some cool art moments. Like I like the thing where like it's black and you see his costume. I think the robe thing is kind of funny because it happens like it's a classic Spider-Man thing. Like it happened in the Stan and Steve, like even like in number 3 and 4 of Amazing it happened. So I think that's kind of a fun callback. I don't know. It's Sal Buscema, and I think it's also in Keith Pollard does the ink, and the art is beautiful in this issue. I love the Mysterio faking out Spider-Man with the water tub. I think that was really cool. And I like how that kind of Mysterio is that kind of character for Spider-Man. He kind of just keeps messing with him and keeping him on his toes and everything. And overall, I give it a thumbs up. It's not as good as the last one, but it's a solid middle chapter.
All right, now the next issue we're going to talk about is obviously Amazing Spider-Man number 200, and it's a pretty landmark historic issue. Jan's obviously going to tackle the recap of that, but before we get into it, I do just want to point out one little thing. is that Stan Lee in the credits page is actually listed as having written one page of Amazing Spider-Man number 200. Now, does anyone here know what page Stan wrote?
No, I honestly do not, and I'm going back to relook at my copy of 200 that I got online here to see where it says that, because I didn't even realize this. I thought his name was credited as writer, just as like, hey, it's 200, so let's credit Stan as a writer. Because I cannot tell you honestly which page it is. It's probably the page where a lot of Excelsiors and a lot of plot inconveniences, like Peter saying something like, hey, I'm going to go to the mall. Next page he's at the library, or something stupid like that, because that's what Stan did a lot. I honestly cannot tell you which issue it is.
Part of me, there's two.
Yes, I'd say it was page. I don't know what page it is, but the page where they recap the origin probably was that one.
I was going to say it's probably either that page or the page where Peter rips off the mask and says, I care because Ben Parker was my uncle. I don't know why. I just feel like maybe Stan would have written that. I don't know.
That, or I would say maybe the recap?
That's what I said.
Of the origin. Yeah, it's probably either one of those. It's probably the origin, but I could see it being him ripping off the mask and saying that. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there before we move into Amazing 200.
I like how they called this issue a sequel to Amazing Fantasy 15. It says The Spider and the Burglar, a sequel, ...
Yeah, because nothing happened in between Amazing Fantasy number 15 and Amazing Spider-Man 200. Nothing happened in that 18-year span, 17, 18-year span.
It's like, guys, this is the original Amazing Spider-Man 2.
All right. Jan's actually going to tackle Amazing 200 in terms of the recap, and then he'll be the first to give his thoughts once again. So, Jan, give us the rundown of the creative team, give us the summary, all of that good stuff with Amazing Spider-Man number 200.
Okay, 200 issues ago, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created a classic. Now, Marv Wolfman, who's the writer, Keith Pollard, and who's the artist, Jim Mooney, who's the inker, Jay Costanza. There's some names I can't pronounce. I'm sorry. Jay Costanza, Glenn Sue, and Jim Shooter continue the legend. So I thought that was really awesome, personally. Okay, so basically, Peter Parker wakes up, or Spider-Man, I should say, wakes up from his fight with Mysterio and realizes that when Mysterio hit him with, I believe, their horse tranks, his powers of more like it didn't knock him out as much as it would a normal person, but it essentially nulled his powers, which I think is actually a really cool idea. So Peter is powerless just when he needs his powers the most. So he goes back to. I'm sorry, I'm getting lost. Okay, so basically he walks home because he can't swing home, and he has to he puts on a trench coat and to hide his suit when he gets home. Basically, we see the burglar breaks out of the basement that Mysterio had trapped him in, and he's says that Peter Parker's going to make me a millionaire, or there's going to be hell to pay. So Peter Parker goes back to the Aunt May house and sees how torn up it is, and he's trying to figure out who's behind this, and he realizes I haven't read this in a while. Does he make the connection that whoever tore up Aunt May's house would be connected with Mysterio in this issue, or is it one of the previous ones?
You might have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but
Sorry about this, by the way. But
he's very suspicious as to why his Aunt May's house could possibly be torn up, because he's not really familiar with any of the stories or any of the story that we're going to discuss as we move through this recap. He's not familiar with any of that, so he's just wondering why they would possibly target that house. And so his suspicions are more arisen by that more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you're right. I think you're right. Anyway, so basically, Peter kind of realizes whoever owned the house probably was the one who's kind of working with Mysterio. So he does some research and figures out that it was the guy who killed Uncle Ben, and that kind of brings back his whole kind of memories of his origin, and he's really angry to find out that the guy who killed his uncle was behind the death of Aunt May too, and he's just really angry, and you see Spider-Man swear that this guy will not cause anyone else any more pain. So you see him do a whole bunch of research on what was going on and why the burglar would have robbed the TV station that he was originally working at when he was first starting out his career as Spider-Man. And he figures out that the guy was there trying to find information on a treasure he was after that was buried underneath the May and Parker house. He was the
James
Every
is
time you hear
laughing.
it out loud, it always makes me laugh about this is the murder motivation, people.
yeah, it's kind of silly. Um, but I personally thought, even though it was kind of silly, I thought it was cool that Marv Wolfman. I'm actually that's a review thing. I'm just gonna keep moving on. So Peter kind of figures that out, and we see him. Um, he goes back to the same TV station, and he ends up. It's kind of a cool parallel to the original moment where we see another burglar like run by in the hallway of the TV station, and Peter tackles him without hesitation this time, and he's kind of thinking, "Wow, I've changed a lot. I've come a long way." And he doesn't say in these past 200 issues, but he's kind of changed a lot since Amazing Fantasy 15, since his first appearance. We see Peter gets captured by the burglar, and since he doesn't have his powers, he's actually overpowered by this guy. And the burglar kind of reveals his whole motivation for like what his whole scheme was, and basically, what is he doing? Oh yeah, so he basically says, I killed your uncle because he got in the way, and it's just kind of a really violent and kind of traumatizing moment for Peter, and then he leaves. We see that Peter gets free, and he starts following the burglar, but he doesn't have his powers. So I assume that he probably still has some of his powers, like maybe they're starting to come back slowly, but they're not full strength, because he is able to grab onto a bus, but it's a lot harder for him than normal, so I assume that meant that he's maybe like Captain America right now, like his powers are kind of, as the trank is slowly getting worked out of his system, he's getting a little bit stronger. I don't know why James thinks that's funny, but whatever. And then
This is the part where issue 200 just falls apart for me. It's the buried treasure plot.
and then so Peter, he's kind of remembering all his times with Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and it's like the many times that he recaps the origin. He eventually tracks down the burglar and finds out that Aunt May is actually not dead, but she's still alive, and that the burglar was just holding her hostage and fake her death to try to get Peter to reveal where the treasure was or something like that.
Oh, you mean it wasn't a genetically altered actress?
Nope. So, don't even talk about that stupid story. We kind of, we get more recap of like how the burglar forced Mysterio to help like him fake Aunt May's death, and this is actually the beginning, and I think this is the first place it happens, the beginning of a time-honored tradition of Mysterio being behind every fake death in Spider-Man history, because he's behind his own fake death in, I believe it's in Conway's run, where they're like, oh, Mysterio died in prison. And then
again during Kevin Smith's Daredevil run.
Yeah, where he fakes his own death again there. And he also fakes, he doesn't help fake Aunt May's, he fakes Aunt May's death here. And then he does not have anything to do with her fake death in 400, does he?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But he has plenty to do with Harry Osborn.
Yeah, and then he faked Harry Osborn's death in Spectacular 200, which is ironic.
Which is because they had to overkill explain why Norman went so long with like heirs and with sins past saying Harry was my only son, except he wasn't. Harry is my only dead son, except he wasn't. Like they had to go over the top with Mysterio explain him. Look, if I do this for you, you gotta play the part. You gotta actually pretend and say shit like, oh, Harry was your dead son and stuff like that. You can't just pretend like Harry's. You can't just go like not talk about Harry. You gotta visit grave sites. You gotta bring up to everybody that Harry's dead. You gotta play along with this Jack, because if not, continuity's fucked even worse than it already is.
Basically. So Mysterio, the gateholder of continuity. So anyway, Mysterio kind of Peter finds out the whole kind of story behind that, and do they say his powers have come back or not? I can't remember. I'm assuming they probably have to some capacity, but anyway, he
rips the rope, so I would assume.
Yeah, so by this point his powers are maybe not quite fully returned, but mostly fully returned. So he beats the living crap out of the burglar, and basically says, "I want to kill you." And it's this kind of Spider-Man's moment where, and this is actually my favorite scene of the whole issue, and this made the whole three-parter for me. It was awesome when Peter's just like, basically tells, he kind of tells the burglar his side of the story, and like, I blame myself for Uncle Ben's death, and if I had stopped you that night, then he wouldn't have died, and the whole reason I'm fighting crime and helping people now is because of you. And he beats him up, and then basically he takes off his mask and says, I cared because I was Ben Parker's, or Ben Parker was my uncle. And then the burglar freaks out, and he's like, oh my god, Spider-Man's going to murder me because he's angry. And he starts running away and trying to, like, escape, and Peter says, I'm not going to kill you, I'm going to take you to jail because, you know, I don't think he says it, but it's kind of, oh no, he does. He says, you know, I've learned that killing is wrong. With great power comes great responsibility. You're going to jail. And then the burglar is like, no, you're going to kill me, and he has a heart attack, which is like kind of silly. And I think kind of a weak ending, but the awesomeness of this whole...
It's very Joe Chill.
Yeah, it is, but it's kind of a cheesy moment, but the whole awesomeness of this whole fight between these two characters, I think, makes up for it. So Peter finally kind of redeems himself, or I should say Spider-Man redeems himself to Aunt May, because she's always thought he was a villain, and he says, look, all these years, I just want to be your friend, all right? I'm not here to hurt you. I want to help you. I just want to be your friend. And then we see, you know, Peter and Aunt May kind of reconcile, and it kind of ends with Spider-Man even more than ever convinced of his lesson that Uncle Ben taught him, and he's swinging through going, you know, I'm here to stay. And I think that was kind of a meta moment, too, because it's also the writer saying that Spider-Man's going to be around much longer past these 200 issues. So that's my recap, and it was probably pretty crappy, so sorry, guys, but thank you for putting up with my constantly asking you, like, you know, to help me fill in the gaps. But so.
All right, Jan, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on the issue?
I think this is easily one of my top 10 Spider-Man stories, if not top 5. I think it's a great issue. It's probably one of the best Centennial issues, in my opinion. The only one that I can think of that rivals it is Spectacular 200, because I think just the emotional conflict, you know, there isn't really a ton of, I mean, there is kind of, it's a little bit silly that his powers go away right as Uncle Ben's murderer comes back, but unlike a lot of other times where that kind of thing happens, there's a scientific explanation for why his powers are gone, and I actually thought it was a clever idea. I love exploring the origin. Spider-Man's origin is one of the best comic book stories ever written, so going back to that and adding more layers to it, and you know, just kind of continuing on from that is always a good thing in my book. So I love the origin stuff.
Okay.
What?
More stupid layers, if you're asking me.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's more. I don't know. At least there's a reason, even if it's a sucky reason. I'm actually going to talk about that now. Even though James is going to make fun of me for it, I like the fact that they gave, as stupid as it is, there is at least an explanation for why he would rob a TV station and then go rob a house. And it's not like Spider-Man 3, where they kind of overcomplicated the origin to the point where it's completely ruined, and Peter Parker no longer even learns that lesson because of the things they added to it. Here, it's just kind of giving more of a motivation from the burglar's point of view. Nothing about Peter's motivation changes. It's just saying, hey, here's a little bit of explanation as to what the burglar's motivation was going into that story. So I actually kind of enjoyed that stuff. And I think the stuff with Aunt May is great. Everything in this issue is great. I love Spider-Man refusing to kill the burglar at the end. This is just all around one of my favorite Spider-Man stories, and I give it a solid thumbs up.
All right, James, let's lead into your thoughts on ASM 200.
It's a good issue. Like Jan said, it is kind of the sequel. It's round 2, and them depowering Peter is kind of stupid but you see their point because they had to make it a slugfest between him and the burglar. It could have just been a one-punch knockout. That's really anticlimactic. So I like that. I like how this is the beginning of a 200-issue journey that got fucked up later, but thanks, Mackie and Bird. But of basically don't ask, don't tell kind of, where she now doesn't fear Spider-Man. Plus, it's kind of hinted, does she know, and or doesn't she? So it is. I kind of like that. And then 400, it says yes, she did know, and then they fucked it up with the Mackie Byrne run. But I like that element with him and Aunt May here. It's really well done. The fight with the burglar is really well done. I make the joke about the Joe Chillness, but it is like that. But you had to do it some way because this guy doesn't have superpowers, so he can't kill himself with his own power or something like that. And you can't have Peter kill him, so heart attack is the easiest way out. But I will give it credit. At least he stayed dead all these years. Not like all the times that DC has had reboots and then Joe Chill has come back alive and they would have even more dumber reasons for how he dies. from, oh, the mob shoots him because he says, I created Batman because I killed his parents. But of course, instead of the gangsters being smart and saying, hey, wait, that means you know who Batman is, right? Tell us his secret identity. No, they just open fire on him. You created Batman. They shoot him dead, and then they realize, holy crap, maybe we should have asked him who Batman was first.
And then they get shot by the other gangsters. We're like, what the fuck?
And then you got, of course, the infamous one that I don't think it's New 52, but it's like post-crisis, infamous crisis. And Batman leaves a gun there in Chill's office, and he's like, I'm not going to kill you because that's against my code, but I'm just going to hand you this gun with one bullet. Now, I'm not going to pull the trigger, but I will tell you that I will come here every day until you either kill yourself or confess to the crime. But I'm not going to pull the trigger, but here's a gun and here's a bullet. But I'm reminding you, I'm not pulling the trigger, but I'm just going to leave this gun here. And then Batman leaves the room, and then bang. He shoots himself. See, I didn't kill him, but I didn't tell him not to commit suicide, so it's okay.
That's like in Batman Begins when he's like, I'm not going to kill you.
Except he's like, I'm not going to kill you, but here's the gun, and I'm going to load it for you. That's literally what happens. But anyways, yeah, that happens. So you got that. So I will say at least it's better than that, but I love it, and I love how Peter says, he takes off the mask and he goes, it's me, I'm Peter Parker, you killed my uncle and I'm going to bring you to jail. And they had to have him die because he found out the secret, but I do love it how Peter's like, no, because I learned power and responsibility. If I kill you, I'm no worse than you are. I'll be you if I kill you. And then the burglar's like, because he is a cold-blooded killer. He's like, no, that doesn't make no sense. You're lying, because I think his exact quote is, I killed your uncle and you're going to kill me. That's how it works. You're lying. How can you not kill me? Everybody kills. You're lying. And you're going, oh! That's how it happens. And you got the A part. That's all good. The parts where this issue kind of falls apart is, A, you don't get the name of the burglar. And normally I'm not that mad. I just go with the Dennis Carradine thing from Spider-Man 3. But it's never been confirmed. Or denied.
It works for me, and plus that's his supposed daughter's name in the Clone Saga, Jessica Kane.
Yeah, but you don't know if she was ever married before and kept the last name. If that's her mother last name, did she change it because she was grossed out by her father?
All I'm saying is that both Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game used the name Dennis Carradine, so that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I'm going with Carradine, but it's never outright said in the comics. I mean, they could do a comic issue where they say it's Brian O'Connor or something like that. But I'm going with Joker. Kind of like how if you ask me what the Joker name is, I say Jack Napier. Because that's what it is in '89, and that's how I know it. So and I think the animated series also said it's Jack Napier. So I'm going with that. Even though I think Denny O'Neil tells all these stories about how writers wanted to give him the name Jack Napier, and he goes, no, in the comics, he doesn't have a name. Yeah, that's the movie and the cartoons. But in the comics, he has no real name. He's just the Joker. Shut up. But that's a tangent for a Batman podcast. But it kind of falls apart here, and I print this out as a negative because he looks up all this stuff. You go for the origin, and I think that is Stan Lee writing it because when you read the narration, it's very Stan Lee. And the winds of fate from the bite made him spider power and great power. That sounds very Silver Age Stan Lee dialogue when you read it. And as he's bitten not by a spider but by fate, and it's like very Stan Lee to me. So I think that's the page. But he's doing it. He's like, it's the burglar. I know now. I read the papers. It's the burglar, the man who killed my Uncle Ben. I'm not going to say the name, though. I'm just going to say he's the killer of Uncle Ben and the burglar. It's not as bad as when they did it in the Clone Saga, where he's like, burglar? The burglar! Like, it's really bad. Like, he thinks somebody's breaking in the house, spoilers, is Ben Reilly, and he outright says, burglar? The burglar! It's hilarious. Because he thinks Ben Reilly is Uncle Ben's killer back from the grave because he's so messed up with Iron the Spider shit. It's hilarious, Clone Saga, and it's greatest. Yeah, so that part's bad. My other big negative that's going to make me bring this comic down to not a full thumbs up, but a slightly thumb up, is the goddamn buried treasure. Because a lot of people, and Jan's that way too, I don't see the point. Who cares that he robbed a movie studio and then a month later shot Uncle Ben? I don't see how the connection, that's impossible.
Okay, I will just say that I'm not saying that it needed to be there. I'm just saying that I just appreciate the fact that Marv Wolfman cared enough about this. Like, I just think it shows the effort that they were putting into the story, so it makes me like it more because I'm like, okay,
I
it's
just want
I
to
agree
the
with you.
logic. I'm not a burglar. I'm not a burglar, so I wouldn't know. I don't rob people and I don't steal shit, so I wouldn't know. But I don't see. My point of view is if you're gonna rob a movie studio or a TV studio that's probably heavily guarded because there's a lot of celebrities there and whatnot, and a lot of big deal guys. Him having the balls to break into something like that, why wouldn't he go and break into a house? Like, I'd never connected the dots how somehow that didn't compute. And it's not just you that had a problem with that. Mark Webb had a problem with that. Sam Raimi had a problem with that. Mackie and Byrne had a problem with that, and they're dumbass.
Why did Mark Webb have a problem with that?
Because they don't do that. They all say, oh, we simplified it with just being, oh, he was robbing a convenience store. Or, oh, he was a carjacker in Sam Raimi's case. Or in Mackie Byrne's case, I was the loading guy who they bought a TV for or a computer for, and because they bought a computer, that must mean they're rich. I have a computer and I'm not rich, but they bought a computer, so they're rich. Plus, I saw Spider-Man leaving that house when I was going to rob it that one night, so he must be my partner, so I came back a day later, because he probably came back to get the computer, so I came in there and I shot the uncle. Literally, that's the explanation they give in the Mackie Byrne run. It's bad, but this one's just as bad. He did it because there's buried treasure, and the map just happened to be in the movie studio or whatever it was. It's the dumbest thing ever. It's completely stupid.
I'm going to argue with you on this, actually. Okay, and you have your right to your opinion, and you're going to make fun of me for what I'm about to say, but it's okay. I think this is better than those other ones because even though it's stupid and it's not necessary at all, and it just overcomplicates things a little bit, it doesn't affect anything from Peter Parker's point of view. Like the Mackie and Byrne one sucks. Not only is it because it's like dumb and doesn't make any sense, but also because it overcomplicates everything. At least this one is just kind of giving you some insight into why the burglar.
The burglar a pirate here, Jan. That's my argument. Yar har fiddly dee, he is a pirate.
I don't care. He still played the same role that he did originally. Doesn't mess up with the story at all, in my opinion. Like the burglar is irrelevant. It's just about what he does to Peter.
Retcons that have happened in the Amazing Fantasy 15. I would say this is one of the worst, up there with Spider-Man 3.
No, you're crazy.
It's this. No, wait, it's Mackie Byrne, this, Spider-Man 3, then, because I like the whole kind of Bendis, the thing that both Bendis and Mark Webb did, how they made it a convenience store, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with what Raimi did, I'm okay with that. The frickin' 70s show completely ignoring Uncle Ben, okay, that one's probably the worst.
Wasn't he like Uncle Max or something in that?
Yeah, he's Uncle Max, and they don't even deal with the Uncle Ben dying. It's in the Clone Saga episode, ironic enough, where she's like, oh, that costume, your Uncle Max wore it once. Wait, repeat that? Your Uncle Max wore it once. Repeat that? Your Uncle Max wore... It's like, literally, I had to rewind it when I was verifying on YouTube the whole series because somebody posted it, and I literally had to go back and kept on going like, wait, did I hear that right? I did. Holy shit!
Okay, see, no, it's not as bad as Spider-Man 3, because Spider-Man 3 was off. I'm just going to go on a rant here, because you're wrong.
No.
Whoa!
No, I'm not gonna. This is not for a fight. I just say let's move on. We can say this after the show, okay, Jan? Because literally, the show's going on way too long. I'm just gonna say this right now. You're wrong. But anyways.
Whoa! Oh man. Okay.
Buried treasure. This is dumb. This is Stanley in the '60s wouldn't come up with something this cheesy.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have this argument after. Just move on. What's your final rating for the issue?
Like it's up, but it's like 11:50. It's not exactly 12 o'clock, but it's there. I'll just say that.
All right. I'll give my thoughts on this issue. Basically, I have the same problem that James did. I don't like the buried treasure thing at all. I find it to be stupid. I find it to be ridiculous. I respect Marv Wolfman. I like his run a lot. I like a lot of what he does throughout the issues that he wrote. But I don't like this. I don't like the buried treasure thing at all. I find it to be stupid. I find it to be ridiculous. I respect Marv Wolfman. I like his run a lot. I like a lot of what he does throughout the issues that he wrote. But I don't like this. I think it's an unnecessary add-on to the origin. I I don't need it explained why the burglar went from a studio to a home. I've never needed that explained because I don't care. It's comics. I don't care. So I don't
I
think
just
about
don't
that.
see it. And just going with Jan, I just don't. I mean, with Johnny, I just don't see it. Like he said, who cares? Because I don't really care. Don't even know why he wanted. If he's gonna rob that, chances are he's also gonna rob houses. I'm just saying that right now.
So it's like I don't care. I don't like the idea of there being treasure in the Peter Parker household because I I it's just so ridiculous to me. It feels so I mean maybe it's a little bit disingenuous for me to talk about ridiculousness with a comic about a guy who can crawl on walls and spin webs. Okay, that's maybe I'm being petty. Maybe it's just disingenuous. But to me, it seems like such a ludicrous plot to put into this context here about this tragic story of this kid losing his uncle because he was too vain to stop a burglar. And then you just throw in this absolutely absurd plot about this guy with a bunch of treasure. It just, to me, it doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit.
Funny. It's just funny
I
because
mean,
all I imagine is the burglar in their basement, like digging for a buried treasure, and there's a chest there with like the gold and the balloons and all that stuff, like a pirate movie. And he's digging a hole in their basement. Uncle Ben's like, "Who the fuck are you? Oh my God!" That's what I imagine.
we say that, but that's what it feels like. I don't feel that this was needed, and to me, it just doesn't feel like it fits within the context of this story that they tried to tell. So I don't like that.
Spider-Man. Buried treasure does not fit with Spider-Man. I'm sorry.
Buried treasure fits with Johnny Depp and Pirates of the Caribbean.
It
All right,
fits with the Fantastic Four because that's Doctor Doom's first issue, and that's it.
So I don't like that. I didn't really like the fact that he lost his powers because to me it didn't seem to add anything to the story. It was something that we've seen before. We saw it in annual number 1. I'm sure we've seen it some other time before that. So I didn't need to see it again. So it just felt like a retread to me. So I didn't really like that. The parts that I did like that Peter had this second confrontation with the burglar. I thought that entire scene in the warehouse was really powerful. One of the most powerful moments, easily of the Marv Wolfman run, and probably of the entire 70s, 80s era. It was just you could feel the emotion, you could feel the anger, the distress in Peter's voice. I could hear it when I was reading the dialogue. It was very, very well done, very well written, in my opinion. I did like the sort of, I don't know if you would call it bringing it full circle, but when he's at the TV studio and Peter stops that burglar, he stops him and he realizes that the guard who comes up to him was the same guard that chewed him out for not stopping the burglar in Amazing Fantasy 15. I liked that moment. I thought that was pretty powerful.
I agree. That's one thing I wanted to mention in my recap and I forgot about. John, I agree with you 100%. I liked that how they tied it in. This time he did stop a burglar at the studio and the guy congratulates him. That is a kind of like full circle great moment.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite moments too. I agree with you guys.
I did like that.
Was that burglar after buried treasure too?
I did like that. I also liked that Aunt May and Spider-Man. I liked that they kind of, sort of started to make up, and I liked Peter and Aunt May's moment at the end. I thought it was very powerful. I liked the scene where Aunt May is alive. All that stuff. I like her and Peter, meeting up again. All that stuff. So there's not too much to dislike in this issue, except for the buried treasure stuff. The burglar plot is very emotional, very powerful. The treasure stuff just brings it down. I'm going to give it a thumb sideways again. It's just a plot that is so ludicrous and so out there for me that it does kind of ruin the issue a bit for me.
Yeah, you guys are crazy. I'm just going to say that right now.
Let's just do this real quickly because this is our first real time dealing with Centennial issues of Amazing, not Ultimate, Spectacular, Friendly Neighborhood, whatever. Of Amazing, Centennial issues. Because if we're getting closer to the end of all our recap, pecking order, how would you rank all like 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700?
This one, I'll give I have never really thought about that. I'd probably put 500 as the worst, and probably put 300 as the best.
Okay. I would go with from best to worst, and you guys are going to disagree with me. This is my best, just because of the powerfulness of the burglar and how it goes back and kind of connects to the origin. I feel like this is just a great thing. And yeah, his motivation is stupid, but for me, the powerfulness of that scene of him fighting him and all the like thematic stuff that happens with Peter's character just makes up for it. And I think, okay, I'll mention that later right before we end. But so this is my favorite. I'd say 300 is second because I think 300 is a really it's a solid story. It introduced a great villain and it had some cool moments with the marriage. Even if I don't think it's as like it's not like an amazing issue in my opinion, but it is a really good fun Spider-Man story that introduced a big character. So I thought that was fun. And then after that I'd put 600 because I think it was a pretty fun Doc Ock story and it had a lot of superhero stuff and I feel like the effort put into that story with the Alex Ross cover and the art and everything was good. And then after that, I'd put 500 because I like 500-ish, but it wasn't like my favorite issue. Like I think I understand why John didn't like it, but I think it's a fun kind of rundown Spider-Man's greatest hits, even if a lot of them don't make sense in the continuity because they're like changed. But I thought it was an enjoyable issue. And then after that, I'd put I have not read 700. I'm just going to say that. I have not read 400, so I don't know where those would rank. And I did not care at all for 100. I thought 100 was a really stupid story. So 100 is my least favorite, and this is my favorite.
I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'll just give out
Sorry about the length of that list, by the way.
But yeah, I'm just going to go on quickly to say one sentence reason why I like something in my ranking. My favorite, 300, first appearance of Venom, and it's a really good story. I like I said, if they were doing another Venom movie, I'd like to see that issue actually adapted for the movie because I think it's a really good story and it could work as a movie.
I think that would make it. I think 300 could make a good direct-to-DVD movie like DC does.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Like I said, all you gotta do is update some of those 80s references from Mary Jane's clothes and the jokes about people's hair.
Also, Venom Dark Origin, the comic book the comic book series is use that as well. I think.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that miniseries when we get to it eventually. But yeah, 300 is my number one. My number two is I gotta think about this, but I would probably say 100 because it's cheesy, the three arms, but it's classic Stanley. So I would go 100 would be my number two. My number three would be this because it's a good story. Just the goddamn buried treasure ruins it for me. So I got that. My fourth is 400 because 400 is a good story and I like it. But what kills it is A, retcons, and B, it's the midway point of the Clone Saga. So it's not a beginning and it's not even an end of a story. It is just midway point of the Clone Saga. Literally, the end of it, you're arrested, Peter Parker, for the murder that Kane caused during Lost Years. Ding! And we found your fingerprints because Kane's your clone. But I don't know that Kane's my clone yet. Confusing, Clone Saga. So that kind of boggles it down a little bit. So yeah, I'll go with that. My number 5 would be 600. I like 600, the wedding part. Mary Jane coming back in classic Mary Jane style is really good. The art is really good. I like how Spider-Man addressed the whole Family Guy, everyone gets one joke, where he saves somebody from Doc Ock, and then he goes, everyone gets one, when the person says thank you. I like that joke. I like how he calls out the fact that there's like 1 billion Avenger teams now, where he goes, oh, it's my teammates in the Avengers. Yeah, we're the Avengers, but another team's calling himself the Avengers guy. And then another team, and another team. So I like that. He was making jokes about stuff like that. So I enjoy that. My next one, I would say, is 500. My next one, my second worst is 500. I just hate that story. It's the first bicentennial or centennial issue I ever read, and I was really psyched up for it, and it was like, left a bad taste in my mouth, kind of, because it was really bad. And then the worst, fucking 700. I'm not even, pretty much if you know me, you know why I hate 700. And also, that goddamn pager Peter thinks about Aunt May doing something with Doc Ock before the wedding, and then Peter screams, "Oh!"
No, that's not in 700. That's in 699.
Well, fine, but still, 700 is worse. But that part still, it's like, I saw it today on CBR. Somebody posted a screen grab of that panel, and it's like literally I want to psychic mind block that out of my head. Like it's, and Dan Slott can say how much. Oh, you guys are perverts. You're reading too much into it. No, we're not. Look at that panel, Dan.
James wants to omit that from his mind.
I
See
do.
what I
I
did
do.
there?
I do. I do. I want to go meet Doctor Strange right now and retcon my whole history with Doctor Strange and Tony Stark. I want them to come in and change everybody's minds. Just please, somebody.
All right, all right. But does anyone have any final thoughts that they're gonna say on the air about Amazing 200?
I do. I just want to throw in a quick point that I forgot to make. I think it's really an interesting thematic, and I think you guys said you didn't like him losing the powers. I think the one thing that I think that attributes to the story is that the scene where he tackles the second robber at the TV station, he doesn't have his powers. And in the original Amazing Fantasy 15, when he let the robber go, he did. So it's a really cool kind of like parallel that Peter Parker did the heroic thing when he had no powers. Like I don't know, just kind of an interesting idea. Like, I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I agree it's a good moment, but I don't think that's what they were going for. Like they did go for that with the Eric Larson Michelini story where Peter loses his powers, where he kept on nearly getting himself killed because he couldn't help himself going to save people. But this one, I just think it was just, we're going to have a repeat of 15. I don't think it went as deep as, see, he doesn't have the powers and he still did it. I don't think he was going that deep.
But I still think it's a cool idea, regardless of whether they intended it.
All right, but that's basically going to do it for our review of Amazing Spider-Man 198, 199, and 200, and that's also going to do it for this episode of the podcast. We thank everyone for tuning in this week. We don't have really anything else to discuss this week. So, James, why don't you give your shout-outs and final thoughts before we sign off?
Shout-out is to my buddy Zach and all the men and women in the Air Force. God bless you all and all the shit you do. My friend left, and it sucks, but he's really important in what he does for the Air Force. So they need him more than we do right now, but hopefully in a few years he can come back, and hang out with us again and be our friend. He's still our friend, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm getting kind of emotional about this. So shout out to my friend Zach and everybody in the Air Force and all the military branches, to be honest. Thank you for all the hard work you do, especially in this time. Next shout out, Netflix, because I've been watching a lot of Cheers and Friends and Frasier lately, binge watching before school. And final shout outs to my college. If any of my professors see this, please give me good grades, please. Because I really want to be a chef. I don't want to be on like freaking Master Chef or something one day and Gordon Ramsay's yelling at me. Please make sure I do good.
All right. All right, Jan, what are your shout-outs this week?
My shout-outs are to Iron Man, and particularly both Matt Fraction and David Michelini and Bob Layton's runs, because those runs are great. I want to give a shout-out to all my friends who came over and hung out with me for my birthday. And I give another shout-out to...
So your shadow? No, I'm just joking. That was a bird. That was a bird. I'm sorry.
A shout-out to who?
No, you said all your friends that came over for your birthday. I said, what, your shadow?
And I give another shout out to I don't know. That's it. I'm done.
Shout out to Buried Treasure.
I give a shout out to Buried Treasure.
My shout out this week: Marvel, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, all them, Marv Wolfman, Selby Sima, Jim Mooney, Jim Shooter, Keith Pollard, however many people worked on those issues. Thank you for Spider-Man. Thank you for all that stuff. Oh my gosh, what else should I shout out to this week? I don't know. I don't really have any other shout outs to give this week. So if anyone's interested, if anyone has ever heard of Total Drama, like Total Drama Island, Total Drama Action, Total Drama World Tour, stuff like that.
I didn't really watch that because that was like post me watching Cartoon Network. Like I'll honestly say I haven't watched Cartoon Network in like 10 years, so that's after me. So but I have heard of it.
If anyone ever watches that, they're starting a new season of that. Well, it's technically a spin-off, but it's made by the same producers and company and people. It's called The Redonkulous Race. It's basically Survivor meets The Amazing Race. So yeah, if anyone's seen that, if anyone's gonna watch that, yeah, that starts tomorrow night. So yeah, who knows? Shout out to all the workers for Labor